Hey. Hey. Hey, friends. Hey. I love drinking out of this mug. Unlike social media, because look, Canadian local artisan who makes the most amazing mugs. You might notice that this one has cats on it. You might notice that. Which, if you did not know, may or may not enjoy me some cats. Love them. Sweet babies. I apologize, I'm a little, I know, right? Right? Take it, right? You may or may not have noticed that I am about, 37 minutes past when I said I was going to start this thing. And that's because I squirreled. I completely thought that this live office hour was going to go live at noon. And that's not the case. So by the time I realized, I was like, I should definitely have a shower. Although, you know how, you know. You wouldn't be able to tell whether I had a shower or not, right? It's only me who could tell. But still, I had a shower for you. You're welcome. Okay. Let's get going. I think it's time to get going. Yeah? Yeah. Let's get going. Hey! I am Dr. Shannon Coates. Look at that big fancy title. Hello. My pronouns are she, her, they, them, and I am coming to you live from a little town north of Toronto in Ontario, Canada. And these are the traditional lands of the 5 seconds. I just need to pull up my acknowledgement. There it is. Traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Mississauga, and the Wendat Neoenseo peoples. Just wanted to get that out there as an acknowledgement of how grateful I am to be on these lands. All right, here we go. Today, live office hours. This is what I do, right? I do a little thing where we get on here, we're going to talk about some things mostly related to pedagogy, all related to pedagogy. In other words, all related to how do we teach, not just, anatomy and physiology, although I have talked about that a little bit sometimes, but really, how do we teach? The teaching part, the teaching part of teaching, of voice pedagogy, the actual pedagogy. And as part of that, as part of the resources and the classes, etc., that I develop for voice teachers, primarily for independent voice teachers, but for all voice teachers of all kinds, we never stop learning, right? Part of that is I offer classes for, again, primarily independent voice teachers, but not always. And one of the classes that is quite, one of the resources that is quite, lots of people ask for, I don't want to say popular might be the wrong word, but that lots of people ask for, and that something that is becoming quite well known as a sort of gap in our education for independent voice teachers now, sort of in our community right now, is neurodiversity, a concept of neurodiversity, and working with neurodivergent singers in the voice studio. And so I have been doing sort of hello, it's Jackson Hearns. I've been doing something of the, I call neurodiversity-affirming VoicePed for a while now. And it's kind of come around again. And so I'm going to be doing a workshop, a short workshop. It's a teacher training workshop with Nikki Loney. Nikki from Full Voice Music invited me to come and do a workshop for her peeps, who are also, lots of them are my peeps too. Hi, Kate. About working with neurodivergent singers. And so that is on, sorry, my calendar's over there. I'm just gonna be like, hi, it's over there. So that is on the 20th of September at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It is a short workshop. Kate! I didn't even notice that it said lover. I mean, it's all good. Lovey is good too. Live it, lovey, feel free. Go ahead. Your intentions are good. I know it. Oh, I love that. Stupid autocorrect. Anyway, so that is on the 20th. And so I will throw some of the links to that, but you can also just go to fullvoicemusic.com and you can register there. And if you come to that, it's a sort of 101. That one is kind of a 101. It's 90 minutes. Let's be honest, it'll probably be a little longer than that. But it's 90 minutes. It's a kind of 101, kind of an introduction. And then if you join that one, I'll give you the $99 because it's $99. I'll give you the $99 off of Neurodiversity-Affirming VoicePed 101, which is a series of classes that will dive in a lot more deeply. A series of classes, 4 classes plus a panel. So the 4 classes are Introduction to Neurodiversity, or maybe it's Neurodiversity 101. I can't remember what it's called. It's an introduction class. We talk about what's the difference between neurodiversity and neurodivergence, when and how do we use those terms, why did they come about. We talk about depathologizing neurodiversity. We talk about what are neurodivergences. We talk about the language. We talk about all of those kinds of sort of introductory concepts. Then ADHD in the voice studio, autism in the voice studio, and then building inclusive voice studios. So we talk about, obviously, ADHD, some of the traits and what that can look like. In autism, we'll talk about some of the traits, of course, characteristics, history, all that. We'll also talk about ableism as well, and how we work with autistic students, which is a little bit of what we're going to talk about today as well as, and then building inclusive voice studios. So there's a lot of intersectionality with neurodiverse folks. Do the intro, thank you. Oh, Kate, oh my gosh, you wept. Kate's just saying that she wept all the way through it. It was so good. Yeah, thank you. Yes, that has been the overwhelming response. Not necessarily weeping all the way through, but the overwhelming response when I'm working with folks in this way is there's a lot of validation for folks who maybe either didn't have a diagnosis for themselves. Oh gosh, we're gonna get into this today. Actually, we're gonna get into this. But anyway, so there's a lot of validation, but also a lot of tools and also a lot of application, which again, we're going to talk a little bit more today. And then the final, there's also a pre-recorded panel that comes along with that workshop, with that price. And that panel is Teaching While Neurodivergent. It's a panel we recorded last year with Elizabeth Berry and myself. And so I am a self-diagnosed ADHD person, and Elizabeth is a formally diagnosed, medically diagnosed, formally diagnosed, hi Christy, formally diagnosed autistic and ADHD voice teacher, educator, business owner, etc. So we talk in that panel about what it meant to have a diagnosis, self-diagnosed or otherwise, what it meant to have the diagnosis, what it meant to us to have that validation, and also to have a lot of things explained. And also a lot of things where we realized how we were compensating and how we had figured out ways to compensate for our neurodivergences, and also then some of the ways that now that we knew what we were doing, now that we knew that we were doing things, right, a diagnosis, gosh, diagnosis can make all the difference. We're going to talk about diagnosis in the voice studio, but diagnosis can make all of the difference to the person who is receiving the diagnosis, especially if it's later in life, where you felt like there's something, I'm just struggling to catch up, I'm just, I can't figure out what's wrong with me. I'm working so hard, lots of anxiety, all of that coming in. And then when you get the diagnosis, there's some regret. There can be some pain involved in that, sadness, of course, but also this huge validation where you're like, oh, there wasn't something wrong with me all this time. Okay. And also this validation of all of the coping skills, the things that we learned to do to be able to survive, and in some cases thrive, right? So all of the things that we learned. And so then we also talk about the things that we both Elizabeth and I have now intentionally incorporated into our teaching, into our lives. Elizabeth has moved out of teaching, but is now a business owner, etc. So, oh yeah, Liz is saying, for me, deconstructing internalized narratives about people who share the same diagnosis, yes, it's a big one, such a big one. Definitely a hefty lift, yeah, 100%, yeah, where you go, oh, I have this thing. I've always thought that people with that thing are lazy, crazy, you know, whatever thing, and now you're like, oh, that's interesting. Yes. Okay, so that starts, that workshop, gosh, this is longer, of course it's longer than I thought. Here we go. That workshop, that series of classes starts on 27 November. It's $550, and registration opens on the 18th of September. You can get on my wait list to be the first person to know. And like I said, folks who do the full voice workshop, I'll give you the $99 off of registration if you would like it. So here we go. What are we talking about today? Leading up to both the workshop with Nikki and the classes that I'm doing, I wanted to include this live office hours, learning how I learned for the first time in adulthood. Was both massively heartbreaking for my past, but so powerful to have unlocked my cheat codes. Yes, it's so true. It's so heartbreaking for when you look back, right? Oh gosh. Oh, hello, still there? Hey, Instagram, sorry about that. I might have to plug in my phone in a minute. Oh, we'll see. I'm so professional. Such the profession. That might be a little internalized weirdness right going on right there, right? Oops. Am I, or am I just leading into my ADHD and making it cute? Okay, here we go. Today we are talking about, I call this one Diagnosis Dilemma. And this is sort of not aimed toward ourselves as voice teachers or ourselves as neurodivergent people teaching voice, but aimed towards ourselves in terms of our pedagogy. And aimed toward understanding, I'm just gonna make it cute, aimed toward our understanding of our pedagogy, our philosophy around teaching, how that affects our pedagogy, how that changes our pedagogy. And I'm calling this dilemma, diagnosis dilemma, because there is this ongoing conversation that I have had with voice teachers that continues with voice teachers and with teachers, all teachers, but obviously my realm is voice teaching, where voice teachers and teachers will say to me, well, they were exhibiting, like they'll say, they did this, this, and this. So they'll tell me these behaviors that they saw and that they either penalized or didn't understand or, wondered why they couldn't get over it, why they couldn't do the thing, etc. And that they considered to be behaviors that needed to change, right? So they consider these are behaviors, they're just not going to get the most out of their lessons, they're not going to blah, blah, blah. All of these negative behaviors. And so then they say, well, I noticed all of these behaviors, and then the parent told me, or the child, or the adult, whatever, told me that they had XYZ diagnosis. Oh, and so then I was like, oh, that explains it. So then I changed my teaching. Okay. So that's very interesting, right? Because you told me that you are an inclusive voice studio and that you support neurodivergent individuals, or you welcome folks who have whatever kind of diagnosis, right? Like you said that to me. You said, and also your marketing says that, and your copy says that, and that's what you believe internally, right? You believe that about ourselves. We believe this about ourselves, that we are doing the best that we can. We believe that about ourselves, and that we are being inclusive, and that we are supporting folks who have learning barriers, right? We believe that about ourselves. And then we have these aha moments where we're like, well, they were doing XYZ thing, and then I heard that they got they have an ADHD diagnosis, and then I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. I'll change the way that I work with this singer now. May I suggest that perhaps your pedagogy wasn't as inclusive as you thought it was? May I suggest? And also, the point of this live office hours is that in many cases, I'm going to throw a statistic out there. Let's say in 80% of cases, it shouldn't matter whether or not you know their diagnosis. It shouldn't matter. This is the world that I would love to live in, right? I would love to live in the world where kids, adults, singers can come into the voice studio or any educational space, schools, any educational space, and not have to disclose a diagnosis. Because the studio, the educational space, the learning space, the voice space, the theater, the business, the doctor's office, the whatever, the space that they're coming into is already set up in such a way that they already have the options that they need to be successful. And also, those options are made explicit in the, thank you, Christy. Those options are made explicit in the policies, in the marketing. So we're not just saying we're a neurodiversity affirming voice studio. We're an inclusive voice studio. They're not just saying it. They're also then listing out all of the things that we love that are there for everything, for every singer to take advantage of. All of these options are there for every singer. So, Liz, what were you saying here? Liz! Oh, why isn't my mouse working? Sorry. Let me just grab this comment. I used to feel this way as well. Thought that I was welcoming and accepting and I'm super nice or whatever. Yes, but my limited perspective meant that I wasn't aware of what needed to. Yes. This is the problem, right? It isn't necessarily that we're doing things because we're like mean people, obviously. I wasn't aware of what needed to fundamentally change about how I teach. Oh gosh, these comments are coming in great, but then it's moving my comment away and now I can't figure it out. Where is it? How I teach. I didn't know the specifics, the ways implicit bias held me back from teaching through my own values. Yes, it's so true, right? That is the thing where we are saying this is the way that I believe I am teaching because I understand these things, I know these things, and then someone makes it explicit that, oh, maybe we're not actually doing the things that I think I'm doing, right? Yeah, Kate, I hear you. I hear you saying that things have changed in the academic setting, and that it's more progressive and that teaching has changed. I hear you. I don't necessarily observe that myself, so I haven't seen that happen myself necessarily. I agree that there's more awareness, certainly. And yes, most schools have workshops for teachers and they've got to take classes, certainly. Yes, I know that. I have taken those classes. Yeah, absolutely. And also, I have not seen this in practice. So I have not seen this in actual classrooms in practice. I want to talk more about studios today, voice studios today, but let me give you one example of in an academic setting, in a classroom, in an academic setting, where this is not put into practice. For example, overall, I haven't seen it in practice. I've seen teachers trying. I've seen more awareness, certainly. I've definitely seen more awareness. But what I haven't seen is the actual practical application, right? The specifics. So in a classroom, for example, having a punitive attendance policy where everyone has to be in class, live in class, every single class, and there's no way to get the information unless they come to class, and that is part of their grade. That is a punitive attendance policy that is not neurodiversity affirming. It is not an inclusive policy. That is a policy that, that kind of grading attendance policy, that policy is ableist. It means that folks with chronic illnesses are going to be penalized unnecessarily. It means that folks with mental health challenges are going to be penalized unnecessarily. It means that folks with ADHD, sometimes in some cases autistic folks, it means that folks with neurological differences that mean that, for example, mornings are really challenging. If your class is in the morning and you require people to be there in order to get the information, and if they're not there and they don't get, and they if they're not there to get the information, they then are penalized. Their grades are penalized, right? So that is a penalizing, non-inclusive policy that is still in place in almost every class that I know of in an undergrad situation. It's not in my class, but in almost every undergrad class. So I'm just saying, yes, I agree, Kate, there's far more awareness around what it means to be inclusive, what it means to change academic structures. There's far more awareness around all of those things, but the actual practical application of it, usually in an academic setting, the practical application is the student has to go to the resource center, and then the resource center sends you an email telling you how to put accommodations into your class. And the only time you can put those accommodations in is if you have the email from the resource center. So the way that I administer that class, my class, though I teach one class, the undergrad level, the way that I administer my class means that most people, yes, it's the 400 extra steps. I know, exactly. How punitive is it for someone who is ADHD, maybe OCD, maybe who has mobility issues? It is so punitive because so I have ADHD, so I need accommodations for, I don't know, I need accommodations to be able to take, or maybe I have a processing difference, right? So I need accommodations to take a longer, like I need more time to do my exams, or I might need more time to prepare for a performance, for example. Okay, so what do I have to do? So I have to now, the burden is on me as the student. I have to go to the resource center or accessibility center. I have to tell them my stuff. I have to disclose all my stuff to them, bring a doctor's note, bring my assessment, bring all the stuff. I have to prove to them that I actually need this accommodation. And then between the two of us, we've got to tell the teacher, and then the instructor has to put all of that into place. Hey, what would happen if I just made my class so that anybody could have the amount of time they needed if they wanted it? That's what I do. So no one in my class needs to disclose or ask for further accommodations. That's punitive. Anyway, okay. Yes, all that likely requires me to accomplish something I literally cannot handle within the required parameters. Exactly, it's the 400 extra steps. It's punitive, right? It is not supportive, it's not inclusive. Anyway, that's academic. Let's talk about it in the voice studio, shall we? Where we're one-on-one and we do not have to work through an administration, right? So we're not in the voice studio, independent voice studio, we are not beholden to an administration. We are not beholden to policies of a university, a college, whatever. We're not beholden to those policies, and where we can do what we want because it's our voice studio. It's mine, my business. I can do what I want with it, right? So in the voice studio, some of the characteristics of some of the traits, some of the behaviors we will notice, not in quotes, these are behaviors. Some of the behaviors, characteristics, traits that we will see in singers who we work with, we judge them, right? We judge those as being bad behavior. We judge those as being like lazy singers. We judge them as being, too talkative. We judge them as not paying attention. We judge them. So we see these behaviors. Society has told us what those behaviors, ableism, etc., has told us what those behaviors are, and that they are bad, and that the singer you're working with is not holding up their end of the bargain somehow, or being disrespectful somehow, or not realizing all the things that we're doing for them, or something along those lines, right? So what happens then if instead of, and then like I said, and then we hear, oh, they have a diagnosis. Oh, they're OCD. Oh, they are ADHD. They are autistic. They have an anxiety disorder. Oh, that explains the absolute necessity. That mean, yes. And we also do that, Christy. Exactly right. We also then are like the martyrs, right? We're the like amazing teachers because we are like, we're gonna like accommodate for these wonderful special students who are like, we become these like superhero teachers, right? We become the hero teacher because, well, when I learned that so-and-so was autistic, I told them that they didn't have to, like, I gave them fidget tools. I gave them fidget tools so that now they aren't required to stand still and look me in the eyes when I learned. And you're not a hero for treating someone like a human being. Like, that's not heroic. You're not like the special teacher. And also, these are not special people who require special accommodations. We are not special, like, this is not like, and they're not heroic people for like, they're not heroic people for taking 4 taxis and specialized taxis, and then also like spending 3/4 of their day and half the price of the lesson to get to you in person because they are disabled. That's not heroic. That is I swear. I'm a very sweary person in person, but on here I try not to be. Anywho, that is punitive. That is a punishment for being disabled. That's a punishment. You're not a hero. You're not a heroic teacher for like providing ramps to get into your studio. You're not a heroic teacher for teaching in a place that has elevators and elevators that accommodate wheelchairs or mobility devices, and for having bathrooms that accommodate wheelchairs and mobility devices. That's not heroic. That is being a frigging human being and treating humans like humans who are worthwhile, who are worthy, right? That's not you being a hero. That's you doing the friggin' least possible. Literally just treating people like people. That is like, congratulations, you made the bar. Congrats. Okay, sorry, I get a little worked up here. So, what are some of the things that we can do in our voice studios? Well, think about some of the things that you changed when you learned that someone had a diagnosis. What did you change in your teaching when you learned that someone had a diagnosis? Look, I am as guilty of this as the next person. This is not me being like, oh, you are terrible people. This is me trying to make it as explicit as possible, right? To make this as, yes, just make it as explicit as possible that we're all on this journey. We're all learning how to be more inclusive, and we're all saying we want to be more inclusive. And honestly, if you don't want to be more inclusive, fine, don't be more inclusive. Be that guy. I don't care. Go be that guy. Just don't say you're being inclusive, right? Just like, don't do that. So, well, maybe not fine. Maybe I care a little bit. All that. Okay, what are some of the things? So some of the things that I changed, not necessarily as the result of a diagnosis of a student who I was working with, but as the result of diagnoses of my kids. Right. So when I started to see the quote unquote accommodations that were suggested in the classroom for my kids when they started to have, when they, had their diagnoses, I was like, okay, explain to me why these are accommodations. Like, explain to me why this is the like above and beyond. Explain to me why this is why classroom teachers need to be told, and of course this is going back 15 years, this is going back a while. However, still, you know, explain to me why teachers, who I love teachers, do not get me wrong, I am not, but the system, explain to me why teachers need to be told to do these extra things. Explain to me why classrooms are not set up, grading schemes, assignments, policies, etc. are not set up in this way for every student in the first place. Explain to me that, right? So now, as I was seeing those things for myself in the classroom with my kids and seeing some of the suggestions from therapists and neurodiversity-affirming therapists, as well as, you know, autism specialists, etc., and also seeing some of the resources that were in the schools and seeing the way that those resources were implemented in the schools, that's when I started to change in my teaching in the studio. So that's when I started to implement things that meant that no one had to give me a diagnosis. Very few people had to give me a diagnosis. Some people did, some people didn't, lots of people didn't. Lots of people did, where I was like, okay. Maybe they had a diagnosis, maybe they didn't. Who knows? I don't know. But one of the things that I can guarantee you is if you set up your studio and your teaching in such a way that people don't have to give you a diagnosis, it will not just benefit the people. These are not accommodations, right? So it's not just going to benefit the people who you think it's going to benefit. It is going to benefit all of the singers you work with in ways that will surprise you. I pinky swear it will benefit all of the singers you work with. So let me give you a couple of examples. Oh, wow, Christy, yeah. We'll threaten to lock you up if your kids aren't in the building. This is in the States, right? Yeah. But definitely don't expect they receive an equitable education. No, right. It's important that they're in the building. Yeah, just being in the building, that's the whole point, right? So here's some things that we can do in the studio, just as gonna throw out a couple of examples. One thing you can do is have, just please, for the love of God, for the love, please, stop it with practice charts and rewards for practice charts and rewards for practicing. Please just stop it. Just stop it. Same with attendance awards and or punitive attendance policies, punitive cancellation policies. Just stop it. Stop. Why? What can you do? And here's what people say, but Shannon, then people are going to cancel and I'm not going to get my money. Well, yeah, that's on you. Set up you run your studio, right? Set up your studio so that you are working on a term where everybody pays the same. They pay the same amount, whether they get 4 lessons or 3 lessons in a month. Set it up that way. Stop thinking about it. Go see a business coach. Go see Michelle Marquardt DeVoe. Go see a business coach about how to set up your studio so that you don't have to have punitive cancellation policies. You can do it. Pinky swear. You can do it. Here's what punitive cancellation policies do. They force folks who are autistic and who are overwhelmed to come to the studio and mask, which is even more challenging, right? We force them to now come to the studio, mask, and try to be like pleasant and try to do the thing, and I'm overwhelmed. And then what happens? Maybe they have a breakdown, or meltdown, in the studio. Maybe they look really sullen in the studio. Maybe they lie on your couch in the studio the entire lesson. Maybe they don't come, and then mom and dad, or maybe they're an adult, and then they feel really terrible because they should be able to come. We force folks who have chronic illnesses or disabilities. Let's tackle chronic illnesses first. We force folks who have chronic illnesses to sing while they're anxious, in pain, not able to focus, not able to, like, so what do? We force them to come to the lesson because they are afraid that they're going to lose their money if they, if they don't come to the lesson, or we force them to lie. Sorry, let's talk about what did I say? Chronic illness? Oh, disabilities. We force folks with disabilities to spend half the price of the lesson to get to the lesson. And I have been guilty of this, so this is why I know. That's making me cry. Oh, hi there. Hi, that just brought up some stuff. What do you know, eh? We force folks to come to lessons and it's going to take them like half their day plus half the price of the lesson to get there. Because it's so important that they need to be there in the lesson. Now, as you know, as I've talked about before, one of the things that was amazing about COVID, one of the good things about COVID, was that we all learned that you can do lessons online. We all learned that. And so what does that mean? That means we now have very viable, very affirming options to teach people and to work with singers when they're not in the room, or when they can't come to the room, or when it costs them so much to get to the lesson. I'm not saying that often folks want to come to the voice lesson because it's one of the things that brings them joy. And maybe someone who maybe has mental health challenges, or is just having a bad day, or maybe is overwhelmed, an autistic person who's overwhelmed, maybe the voice lesson is the place where they feel the most themselves and they feel that they can be the most honest and the most open. And then they want to come. And so that is a whole other thing, right? But if we're not offering the option and we're not normalizing the option to not come to a voice lesson, and if we are not normalizing non-punitive attendance policies, what do? We force people to lie to us. We force parents to lie to us, right? Parents are like, oh, well, my kid is really coughing and they couldn't even go to school today because I think it might be COVID. And then we're like, oh yeah, no, you shouldn't come to your lesson. Maybe they're coughing, maybe they couldn't go to school today, but maybe it's because they literally couldn't get out of bed. Maybe it's that. Okay, so that's one example, punitive policies. And so when I learn, oh, so-and-so is autistic, and I say, oh, well then I guess they don't need to stand still while they're in their lesson, and I guess they could then, maybe I'll invite them to bring their fidget toys to the lesson. Amazing. You know who else loves fidget toys? Kids. All kids love fidget toys. There's no, yes, it is a very effective way for autistic people to express, listen, stay focused, etc., to use some kind of fidget toy, for sure. And also, you know what? Kids as well. This is not why don't we just have fidget toys? Why don't we have lots and lots of things in the voice studio for people to use? Why? Explain to me why that's an accommodation. It's not an accommodation. It's just treating people like people. Okay. They also learn to reflect our projected values back to us as legitimate excuses. Yes. You can learn a lot about how you're perceived by the reasons people give for missing lessons. 100%. Christy, so true. Yep. People will tell you the thing that they think is most important to you in order to get, they'll project that back to you, right? So like if you don't want to get sick, or which is fine, like whatever, but if that is a big value to you and you're saying like you can't come if you're sick, which is fine, and you're not offering anything else. So you're not offering you're too sick to come to your lesson. Great. I'm going to put together a playlist of terrific videos for you to watch during your lesson time. Still pay for it because we're on a term and I'm going to, do the thing that's going to be great for you. Or you can't get out of bed. That's amazing. Do you want to do your lesson from bed? And then we'll do like a listening party on Zoom? Amazing. Let's do it. So but what happens when we don't offer these options is then people are like, well, I can't go to my lesson today. I'm too overwhelmed. So what do I tell them? I tell them, oh yeah, they really respect when I'm throwing up. Okay, so I'm just going to tell them that I'm throwing up, and then I can get out of my lesson. Okay, you don't need a diagnosis to change the way you teach. You don't. And you don't need a diagnosis to put accommodations in place. Whatever you think of as an accommodation, I bet it's just actually offering options. I know. I know. So I will say, as with everything, there are some caveats, and there's a greater complexity, right? There's always a sort of greater complexity here, where in some cases we just don't know. And so, or we just don't understand what a particular, Ehlers-Danlos, for example, some chronic illnesses where we actually don't know how that affects the singer we're working with. And so offering something that is specific for offering options around Ehlers-Danlos is going to be tricky because you're not actually sure, and it affects all the singers in a different way. But let me tell you, allowing singers to sit during their lessons, that's not an accommodation. That's treating people like human beings. Oh yeah, Carolyn, love that. Seating options. Yeah, chairs, benches, yoga ball. I love a yoga ball. I also love, where is it? Oh, there it is. I love these things. This is like a pillow, I can't remember what it's called, balance pillow or something along those lines. And it has a textured back as well, so you can sit on those if you want, on a bench. I would have this if you're teaching piano and you don't have one of these on your piano bench for the singers or the pianists you're working with, get one, okay? Just get one. A pinky swear. Not only will it help the singers who are neurodivergent, especially autistic folks, or folks with low proprioception, or folks with low muscle tone, or folks, there are so many singers it's going to help. It's also going to help the folks whose executive function isn't developed yet. Kids, all the kids. This will help them to be focused rather than you saying, sit still. Stop saying sit still. Stop doing that. Do this. Change the circumstances. It's not an accommodation. It's treating people like human beings. I've said this before, I also had a couch in my studio. When I was teaching in a traditional voice studio, I had a couch in my studio. And I had singers who would start their lesson, you're so welcome, who would start their lessons on the couch, lying down, literally lying down on the couch. Yep, and I'm fine with that. You can sing lying down. These are like 16-year-olds who aren't necessarily going to go into singing as a career. Oh, boop. Sorry, my phone. Hi, Instagram. Hopefully we're back. Sorry about that. Love my posture and meditation chairs. Yes, regular chairs for people who need a backrest. Exactly. Gamer chair. I've got my gamer chair in the background there. Gamer chairs, whatever. Lots of sitting options. Also lots of standing options. You can make the studio. What are the things that you think about? So you learn that someone has a dyslexia diagnosis, right? So someone is dyslexic. What are the things that you're going to change about the way you work with that singer that oh, maybe aren't actually accommodations. Maybe they're just treating all the people like they're actual people. What are some of the things you might change? You might change the way you teach theory, if you teach theory. You might change the way you use, the way you offer, scores, right? You might just put a melody line in there, and you might then have like a ruler or something along those lines that they can watch the melody line, or some kind of super fun, I've done this before too. Where's my, oh, well, this one's still in the package, but see this? So then this is, they can just, yeah, colors, exactly. They can just go along and like, do, and block the thing that they don't want to look at, and go along, right? The things, and this is also helpful for all children who are developing. These are not, again, I'm gonna say it one more time, it's not an accommodation, it's just treating people like humans. It's just treating people as if they're real people. That's all it is. So do you need a diagnosis in order to work with singers in your voice studio more effectively? Maybe, in some cases, maybe. But I bet that if you thought about the things that you would change in your teaching once you knew someone had a diagnosis, I bet you wouldn't need to have that diagnosis. I'll give you one more example. So say you work with autistic people for whom bright lights and lights that have a lot of noise in them are really distracting and really hard on sensory input. And then say you also work with someone who is blind, legally blind, who needs bright lights and lots of sensory input in terms of lighting in order to be able to function successfully in the studio. What do you do then? Well, I can't do both. Yeah, you can. Put your freaking lights on a dimmer. Of course you can do both. What are you talking about? You can do both. And then what are you doing? You're giving options, right? So then people don't have to say to you, hey, I'm autistic and I can't handle all of these bright lights coming into my, like it's too much, it's sensory overload. What do? You just say, hey, I've got, to every singer who comes into your studio, you say, hey, all of these lights are on a dimmer over here. And also here are the extra lights, right? Here are the extra lights over here that you can turn off or on. Let me know which ones you'd like off or on. And or come and do it yourself. Whichever ones works best for you. Let's just figure it out. This is great for me. I'm not an autistic person. However, like some days I need less input. I need less sensory input. I need less lights in my life. And some days I want all the lights in my life. This is good for me, just for my choices, you know? I'm a little hot under the collar. Can we double down on the responsibility to educate ourselves on the realities of the spectrum of learners that exist? Yeah, exactly, Christy. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's part of it too. I mean, people ask all the time in like, you know, the forums, and people email me all the time about resources, because we are genuinely well-intentioned people, I think, for the vast majority of teachers, right? We're genuinely well-intentioned. We genuinely want to have more inclusive studios. We genuinely want to meet the needs and support the singers who we're working with, right? Meet the needs of and support the singers who we work with. So that is our best of intentions. And in order to do that well, a little bit of education is required, for sure. So, I mean, that brings me right back to like, hey, you should come and do my workshop with Nikki Loney, and also you should come and do Neurodiversity-Affirming VoicePed 101 with me. So thanks for that. Teeing that one up, Christy. Appreciate that. Just teeing that up. But yeah, so you might want to educate yourself. I think you do want to educate yourself on what are some of the things that are supportive for autistic people, or for people with chronic illnesses, or for people who might have any diagnosis, right? What are some of the things that we can do to support? and then maybe do them. And also not just do them, but offer them and make them explicit in our studio policies, on our websites, et cetera, et cetera. Like in every newsletter we send out, we say like things like, oh, hey, by the way, in this studio, everyone is encouraged to either bring, here's one, bring your favorite support stuffy, because that's a thing. Support stuffies are totally a thing. Plushies, right? Support, that is totally a thing. Bring your favorite sport stuffy, and or I've got a few here in the studio, and or bring your favorite fidget toy. What do you love fidgeting with? What feels great in your hands right now? And or I've got a whole bunch here, and or suggest which ones you love, because we love movement in this studio. We love everybody to feel super comfortable and supported in this studio. And you send that out to every single singer in your studio. Adults, kids, parents, all of them. Pro track, doesn't matter. Pro track singers. There are disabled and autistic and chronically ill professional singers. 100% there are. Send it out to all of them and you say, this is what we do in this studio. You normalize that. You normalize that shit. Stuff. You normalize that stuff. Make it part of the options. And then no one has to have an accommodation. Well, fewer people have to have an accommodation. Fewer people have to ask. Fewer people have to disclose. Fewer people have to put themselves out there in a way that they may not want to put themselves out there. No parents have to do that. It is a dilemma. I can tell you as the parent of neurodivergent children, it is a dilemma whether it is going to help or hinder to disclose when they're young, to disclose a diagnosis. That is a dilemma. That is something that is challenging, because we're not sure whether that is going to make whether that is going to result in better supports for that person, or whether that's going to result in some kind of weird coddling weirdness. Yeah. So it is a challenge for parents to, let me just say, like, it is a challenge. It's also a challenge for autistic folks in particular, I will say, knowing many adult autistic persons, but also having adult autistic folks in my home who I birthed. It is a challenge for them. Yes, exactly. Older learners, exactly. Yes, let me say, Christy, yes, exactly. It is a challenge for them to know when to say something or not to say something. They don't know a lot of times. And so they shouldn't have to, is my point. They shouldn't have to. Spaces in this world, I would love for spaces in this world. This is the other thing, like for folks who use mobility devices, folks who are in wheelchairs, that kind of thing. This is also a challenge for them. They shouldn't have to call ahead to the restaurant to ask whether or not they're going to be able to get in the freaking door. They shouldn't have to. They shouldn't have to call ahead they shouldn't have to look it up on the website to see whether or not they're going to be able to get into the lawyer's office. They shouldn't have to call ahead to see whether or not they're going to be able to get into the museum. Like, they shouldn't have to. This should not be part of the way we work, right, as a society. It should not. I think it should not. I think we should be building buildings where no one has to call ahead to see whether or not they're able to get in the building. Okay. And older learners, yes, Christy, exactly. Higher seats, warmer rooms, larger front, yes, parking accommodations, etc. Yes. So older learners as well. If you have a ramp in your front, if your building is accessible, that isn't just so if your building is accessible for wheelchairs, for example, that isn't just great for wheelchair users. That's great for anybody who has a mobility, who has mobility challenges and or who needs a mobility device. Anybody who's on crutches, anybody who is using a cane, anybody who is just unsteady on their feet. It's amazing for anybody who is, quote, klutzy and or who has proprioception issues, right? Where am I in space and time? It's great for them. Stairs are annoying for people who have proprioception challenges or balance challenges. People who have ear things, they have balance challenges, and so like having stairs can be a nightmare. Yes, it can. And it's also great for parents who are pushing strollers. It's great for a lot of people to have a ramp and have an accessible building. It's not just, it's also, you know what? Okay, let's do one more. I gotta stop soon. Let's do one more thing. In public buildings, washrooms that are large enough to accommodate anyone with large gear to tote. Exactly. Pianos. Exactly. I shouldn't have to call ahead because I'm moving a drum kit in and I don't know whether I'm going to be able to get the drum kit into the back door of the restaurant, right? Where I'm playing my gig. Yes, exactly. It's good for everyone. Washrooms, public washrooms. There's only ever like one stall that is large enough to accommodate a wheelchair, right? Right. What would happen? What would happen if we just made all the stalls large enough to accommodate a wheelchair? Oh, you know what would happen? And also if we made some of those toilets higher and some of those toilets lower. Why do they all have to be the same thing where no one is happy except for, you know, the average, and a very average heighted person, right? Tall people are like, wow, I'm gonna fall into the thing. This isn't even a like, and then, or if they're too high, children cannot get on them. So like, why aren't we just offering those as options? Okay, I'm gonna get off this now. I can stop. If you want some more information, if you want to dig a little bit more deeply into neurodivergence, into neurodiversity-affirming VoicePed, please come on out to Nikki, the workshop that I'm doing with Nikki Loney, and then maybe if you like what you hear there, you can come and see me in my series of workshops, which is Neurodiversity-Affirming VoicePed 101. Starts September 27. Waitlist is on now because registration opens on the 18th. Okay. Talk to you later, friends. Also, my phone is at 6%, so tricky. Oh, you're so welcome, Christy. I'm glad. Thank you. Thank you for being there. Appreciate that. Okay, take good care. Here we go. Boop. Let's get off Instagram first, right? Because I think it's gonna it's about to die. My phone's about to die. So let's do that. Okay, and now let's get off. Here we go. Bye.